Backstage, the curtain parts and rows of executives stare forward, while a speaker wonders if she belongs. Minutes later, she repeats one word to stay grounded, because titles vanish and everyone is simply human. Leadership pressure spikes when uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure appear. Yet people often call it weakness and hide. That hiding creates armor, which means protective thoughts and behaviors that block real connection and honest problem solving. Teams then avoid hard conversations, so clarity fades, trust falls, and resentment spreads through back channels. When courage is treated as a trait, learning stops and fear quietly sets the rules for the entire culture. In meetings, people nod politely, later complain in private, and the real work gets delayed by silence. When change moves fast, leaders can either name the anxiety and build safety, or watch rumours multiply. Next, the focus is on rumbling with vulnerability, living into values, braving trust, and learning to rise. This video is inspired by Brené Brown's Dare to Lead. Subscribe for practical courage skills. Vulnerability is the emotion experienced during uncertainty, risk, and exposure, and it is present in every workplace. Rumbling is a conversation practice that embraces that emotion with curiosity, generosity, and shared ownership. Without this skill, other courage skills cannot function, as avoidance keeps the hardest truths hidden. Courage and fear can coexist, so the question becomes how to respond when fear pulls you toward hiding. When a group of elite soldiers was asked to define courage without vulnerability, the room fell silent. That silence reflects reality, as every bold conversation, apology, or risk involves uncertainty and exposure. This idea redefines leadership from image management to human engagement, where honesty is possible without perfection. It also dismantles common myths, such as the notion that vulnerability is optional, or that it means oversharing personal details. Start by naming the feeling in plain words, then ask what support looks like and what blocks openness. Practice short rumbles often, so that hard topics become normal, and the team builds muscle memory together. Armor is the set of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors used to avoid vulnerability when stakes feel personal, like silence, cynicism, or perfectionism. The mechanism is always protection from exposure, even if it looks different. When a culture avoids tough conversations, feedback gets delayed, and problems move into gossip and back-channel meetings. This pattern drains trust and engagement, while fear of ridicule keeps bold ideas hidden and the status quo intact. In a change meeting, leaders skip naming fear, and the team starts managing rumours instead of solving the real issue. Psychological safety means people believe they can take interpersonal risks without being punished or humiliated. Building that safety starts with a clear container, then asking what support looks like and what will get in the way. This keeps brave work possible because care and connection become the minimum standard for leading others well. Choose one avoided conversation, write the real issue in one sentence, and commit to saying it respectfully. Afterward, recognize any armor that showed up and practice self-compassion, so learning replaces shame and blame. Values are standards of behavior that guide judgment, especially when fear and pressure push toward shortcuts. Living into values means aligning intentions, words, and actions with what matters most, not merely declaring ideals. When values remain vague, decisions become either paralyzed or impulsive, and teams argue about tactics instead of purpose. Turning values into observable behaviors creates accountability, as people can learn the skills and measure progress. One organization uses 3 values: be brave, serve the work, and take good care, then defines specific behaviors. Behaviors include setting boundaries, leaning into difficult conversations, and talking to people directly rather than about them. This connects back to courage building, as values act like a North Star when emotions run high. Clear values also shape culture, as hiring, coaching, and feedback can reference shared behavioral expectations. Choose 2 core values that define you at your best, then list 3 behaviors that prove them weakly. If clearer values would help your leadership, subscribe for more tools that turn courage into daily practice. Trust grows through small, repeated moments rather than grand gestures, accumulating like marbles in a jar. Consistency is the mechanism, as support, respect, and confidentiality add marbles, while disrespect and gossip remove them. To make trust actionable, the braving inventory names 7 behaviors that define what trust looks like. These behaviors include boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault confidentiality, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity toward others' intentions. A child shares an embarrassing moment, and friends spread it, causing trust to collapse before the next class even starts. Rebuilding starts with noticing who earns marbles over time through kindness, listening, and keeping private information private. This supports brave work because people cannot share honestly without trust, and trust cannot grow without risk. It also protects teams from betrayal cycles, as clear expectations reduce accidental boundary crossings and secrecy. Use braving as a shared checklist, then discuss one element at a time whenever a relationship feels shaky. Over time, these conversations replace vague disappointment with concrete requests that make trust repair possible. Learning to rise is a resilience practice that helps recover after a fall, conflict, or failure without losing values. It works by separating the story you invent from the facts you verify, then finding the difference between them. When the invented story dominates, behaviour follows conjecture, and fear drives blame, silence, or angry overreaction. When the difference is explored, key learnings emerge, and people regain authorship over what happens next. During a stressful moment at home, one partner assumes judgment, then later realises shame and self-blame drove it. Using a simple phrase like, "I am making this up," invites a calmer check of assumptions before conflict escalates. This connects back to rumbling because story checking requires vulnerability, curiosity, and a willingness to own your part. It also strengthens trust and values, as teams can learn from setbacks instead of hiding behind defensiveness. In a group conflict, set an intention, build a container, name emotions, list assumptions, then identify the difference. Close by choosing key learnings, assigning responsibilities, and scheduling a circle back so change becomes embedded. Daring leadership is not about avoiding discomfort, but about showing up with an open heart for real work. Courage cultures form when people practice vulnerability, refuse armour, and treat connection as a requirement, not a bonus. You learned how rumbling creates shared language, how values become behaviours, and how braving makes trust specific. You also learned how story work finds the delta after a fall, turning conflict into learning and responsibility. These practices reduce gossip and resentment because people can speak directly and repair mistakes before damage spreads. They also increase innovation and inclusion because psychological safety grows when respect and empathy replace shame. Start with one practice today. Invite a short rumble, write 2 values, or use braving to clarify a fracture. When feedback feels harsh, remember whose opinions matter, then return to those people for honesty and support. Each repetition builds the courage muscle until tough conversations feel less like danger and more like service. If you want a workplace where brave work becomes normal, subscribe for more guides that help teams practice.